Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our ninth entry into the series on Kaspersky Unified Monitoring and Analysis Platform. In this particular entry, we are going to talk to you about how to create new correlation rules, and we will use a scenario of creating rules for brute forcing. So the first thing is to make a correlation rule is we need to go to resources and then correlation rules, and we're going to click on the add button to open the window where we can create a new correlation rule. In this window, we'll enter the name of the rule, for example, and we'll select its particular type. So here you can see standard, simple, operational, etc. So just to give you a brief explanation, operational is going to be the need to fill active sheets and have one selector. Simple is going to be rules that are based and triggered every time a new event is discovered that satisfies the conditions of a selector. So please just remember that it has inherited fields that have events that transfer from the source to the actual correlation. And the trigger frequency limits the number of times a rule is triggered per second. All right. So then we also have the standard option. This type of rule is triggered when the threshold value is reached for a group of events that satisfies the conditions of the selector, the event grouping fields, and contain a lifetime for the actual group. So as you can see, based off of all of the different kinds of options, operational, simple, and standard, we have quite a wide array of different options that's available. We can perform different actions using the different selectors. We can enrich, we can categorize, and so on and so forth. But if we can quickly zoom in a little bit more on the standard rule. The standard rule gives us grouping fields, unique fields, trigger frequency, container lifespans, basic events, storage policies, for example, first, last, and all. Now, for each and every one of these, first is focusing on the first basic event, last focusing on the last basic event, and all that saves all basic events in the correlation event. Then you have importance level and sorting. Now, when we then have a look at the selectors tab, we can create a selector by specifying a name. We select the trigger threshold, meaning the number of events that need to be received to trigger this particular selector. Now we move on to the writing of the actual selectors. So by clicking add condition, an empty condition will be added. You can cut it down to if or if not, or in the process of writing rules, you can use event field or active sheets or contextual charts or dictionaries or charts or filters and even threat intelligence streams. You can also use different operators, and there's quite a few different ones that's available. And if needed, ignore the register and check the type. So you can just basically select the check marks, right? You can also go ahead and you can add groups of events and move conditions around as needed. You can even make a small structure if you wanted to. So don't forget that you can write rules as code, your full own code. Now, in the Actions tab, as part of the standard correlation rule, you can perform any actions on the first trigger, the subsequent trigger, each trigger, and after the container's lifespan has expired. The following actions are available: send for further processing, send to the correlator, option to not create an alert, add different enrichment, change the asset category, and also update active sheets or context tables. Now, let's look at writing correlation rules. For example, let's write them to detect brute force on the SSH service. We'll consider the brute force successful if after 20 unsuccessful login attempts, there is, in fact, a successful login attempt. First, we'll specify the name. So in this case, successful brute force as the name. We specify the tenant. We select the type as standard. Then we're going to go ahead and we're going to send destination hostname and destination address to the grouping fields. All right. Now, additionally, we want this container lifespan time to be 60 seconds, and we're going to have a critical level of importance. We're going to sort this based on the timestamp. Now, we are going to need to add some selectors to this as well. So as you can see, we are adding our identical fields and these kinds of pre-selectors, if you will. So after we have completed this, we've specified our severity level and all other details that I just mentioned. We are going to add two more selectors. All right. Now, these selectors, the first one is for failed password. So this is an unsuccessful login attempt, basically. And in this instance, when we create this selector, we're going to specify it as 20. And then we're going to add the conditions. So once we've specified our threshold, we've added our alias or name, we're going to add these conditions. And what we're going to do with that is failed password, which is one of the pre-selectors that we can select. And then the second one is device process name for SSHD, right? Now, SSHD is going to basically specify to SSH. Then we're going to add for accept password, and the number of triggers is going to be equal to 1. So the message will now be basically accept password equals. So once we have these details, then we can go over to the action stage. What do we want to do after something like this has taken place? And once we have seen this as part of our alerts or events or whatever the case is. All right. Now, once we are finished with creating the final part of our selectors, we will just go ahead and go to the action stage. And on the action stage, we are going to then fill in the compromised hosts active sheet that we are using for comparison, basically, right? So IP and destination address, host name and destination host name, user and destination username, and reason, we will say brute forced. Okay. So that, ladies and gentlemen, is basically how you can go ahead and create a few different correlation rules, create your own rules, such as this scenario, such as this example. And as always, we're now at the conclusion of the 9th entry into our series on KUMA. Hopefully this session has been enlightening and you learned a thing or two from us today. We hope to see you in the next video as well. And as always, thank you so much and goodbye.